What if the person standing between you and everything you want is not your circumstances, not your past, not the people who doubted you? What if it is you? Not the conscious you that sets goals and makes plans and genuinely wants to succeed. The other you. The one operating just below the surface. The one that waits until things are going well and then quietly, systematically, destroys them. Stay right there. Because what psychology knows about self-sabotage is about to explain a pattern in your life that has confused and frustrated you for far too long. If you are new here, subscribe right now and drop a comment below telling me what is one goal you keep starting and never finishing. I read every single comment. Now let us get into it. What self-sabotage actually is. Most people think self-sabotage is simple. They think it means being lazy, lacking discipline, not wanting success badly enough. And so the solution they reach for is more motivation, more willpower, more aggressive goal setting, more hustle. And then the same pattern repeats. The same abandonment of the diet 3 weeks in. The same avoidance of the opportunity that was right there. The same relationship pattern. The same career ceiling. The same inexplicable destruction of something that was genuinely working. And they conclude that something must be fundamentally wrong with them. There is not. What is actually happening is far more sophisticated and far more psychologically understandable than simple weakness or lack of discipline. Self-sabotage is the conflict between two different parts of yourself operating simultaneously with completely opposite agendas. The conscious part wants the goal. Genuinely. The success, the relationship, the healthier life, the business that works. That desire is real. But underneath that desire is an unconscious part that has a completely different priority. Not success. Safety. Familiarity. The avoidance of outcomes that somewhere deep in the system feel more threatening than the failure that is already familiar. And when these two parts come into conflict, the unconscious almost always wins. Because the unconscious is older, faster, and more deeply wired than the conscious mind that makes the plan and sets the goal and genuinely believes this time will be different. Self-sabotage is not weakness. It is the unconscious mind doing its job. Protecting you from threats it identified long before you were old enough to question whether they were actually threats at all. Where it comes from. Self-sabotage has roots. And those roots almost always reach further back than the behavior itself. The most common root is an unconscious belief about what you deserve. This belief was not chosen. It was formed in early experiences that taught you something about your own worth. About what people like you are allowed to have. About how much success and happiness and love is appropriate for someone with your history, your background, your particular combination of wounds and mistakes and inherited limitations. These beliefs operate entirely below conscious awareness. You would never say out loud that you do not deserve to succeed. The conscious mind rejects that immediately. But the behavior tells a different story. The behavior of consistently arriving at the edge of something good and then finding a way through procrastination, through conflict, through avoidance, through the particular decision that undoes everything to not quite get there. The second root is the fear of success itself. This surprises people. Fear of failure makes sense. Fear of success seems irrational. But psychology consistently identifies fear of success as one of the primary drivers of self-sabotage. And it is not irrational when you understand what success actually threatens. Success means change. And change, even positive change, means leaving behind the familiar. The familiar version of yourself. The familiar relationships built around the current version of you. The familiar identity that, however limiting, at least feels known and predictable. Success means visibility. And visibility means judgment. And for someone who learned early that being seen was dangerous, becoming more visible through success can feel at an unconscious level like one of the most threatening things imaginable. Success means expectations. The higher you go, the more is expected of you. And for someone who already feels that they are performing at the limit of what they can sustain, the prospect of a higher baseline of expectation can feel genuinely terrifying. The unconscious mind sees all of this, calculates the risk, and decides without consulting you that staying where you are is safer than going where you say you want to go. The third route is the comfort of the familiar even when the familiar is painful. Human beings are creatures of pattern. And the nervous system, which is fundamentally conservative in its operation, consistently prefers the known over the unknown. Even when the known is difficult. Even when the known is painful. The person who grew up in chaos is comfortable in chaos even when they hate it. The person who has always struggled financially experiences a particular kind of anxiety when money starts to become more available because abundance is unfamiliar and unfamiliar feels unsafe. The familiar suffering, as strange as it sounds, can feel safer than the unfamiliar success. And the self-sabotage that returns you to the familiar is the nervous system doing what nervous systems do, moving toward what it knows and away from what it does not. How it shows up in your life. Self-sabotage is one of the most creative and varied psychological patterns in existence. It wears different faces in different people and different situations. But once you know what to look for, you will start to see it everywhere. Procrastination is self-sabotage. Not the ordinary procrastination of avoiding a task you find boring. The specific procrastination that appears most powerfully around the things that matter most to you. The project that would actually change your life that you have been almost starting for 2 years. The procrastination that is perfectly calibrated to prevent you from ever finding out whether you could actually do the thing you are most afraid of failing at. Perfectionism is self-sabotage. The insistence that conditions must be perfect before you begin. That you must be more prepared, more qualified, more ready. That the product must be flawless before it is released into the world. Perfectionism looks like high standards. It functions as a permanent excuse to never find out what happens when you actually try. Self-destruction in relationships is self-sabotage. Getting close to genuine intimacy and then creating conflict. Becoming cold just as the relationship deepens. Choosing unavailable people. Finding flaws in genuinely good partners that make staying feel impossible. Engineering the ending before the vulnerability of real connection can arrive. Lifestyle self-sabotage is perhaps the most recognizable. The diet that goes perfectly until it does not. The exercise routine that runs flawlessly for 3 weeks and then disappears. The healthy habit that is maintained right up until the point where it would start producing real results and then abandoned in a moment that seemed random but was anything but. Right here in the middle of this video, I want to stop and ask you something directly. Which form of self-sabotage do you recognize most powerfully in your own life right now? The procrastination. The perfectionism. The relationship patterns. The lifestyle habits that never quite stick. Drop it in the comments below. Honestly. Because naming the specific way self-sabotage shows up in your life is one of the most powerful things you can do to begin interrupting it. And your honesty creates space for someone else watching this to be honest too. If you are not yet subscribed, please do it right now. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. We go deep every single week on psychology, behavior, and the real reasons people do what they do. Now let us finish this. The path out of self-sabotage. The path out of self-sabotage does not begin with more discipline. It does not begin with a better system or a stricter routine or a stronger commitment to the goal. It begins with curiosity about the pattern. Not judgment. Not the familiar self-criticism that arrives every time the sabotage happens and you are left looking at the wreckage of another abandoned effort. Curiosity. The genuine, compassionate, honest question: what is this protecting me from? Because self-sabotage is always protecting you from something. Always. The protection may be misguided. The threat may be outdated. The calculation may have been made by a much younger version of you operating in circumstances that no longer exist. But there is always a logic to it if you look honestly enough. The first step is to get specific about when the sabotage appears. Not in general. In specific. What exactly was happening the last time the pattern appeared? How close were you to something? What would have happened next if the sabotage had not arrived? What would that next step have required of you that felt at some level below conscious awareness threatening? The specificity is where the information lives. The second step is to identify the belief underneath the behavior. What does the self-sabotage suggest you believe about yourself or about what is available to you? What story is it telling about your worth, your safety, your right to have what you say you want? These beliefs will feel like truth when you find them. That is how you know you have found the right one. The discomfort of recognition is different from the discomfort of irrelevance. The third step is to build evidence against the belief. The unconscious belief that drives self-sabotage is maintained by a lack of contradicting experience. Every time you sabotage, you confirm the belief. You never get the evidence that would disprove it because the sabotage prevents you from ever finding out what would actually happen if you let yourself succeed. The antidote is small, consistent, deliberately chosen actions that contradict the belief. Not the big dramatic effort that the whole system mobilizes against. Small enough that the resistance does not fully activate. Consistent enough that the evidence accumulates. Until the nervous system has enough contradicting experience to begin updating the belief that was driving the pattern. The fourth step is to get support. Self-sabotage is one of the patterns most resistant to solo resolution. Because the very mind that is doing the sabotaging is the same mind you are trying to use to stop it. A therapist, a coach, a trusted person who can see the pattern from the outside and reflect it back without judgment. This is not weakness. This is intelligence applied to the recognition that some problems require a perspective that is not available from inside the problem itself. The psychology of self-sabotage is ultimately the psychology of a mind that learned to be afraid of its own potential. A mind that was shaped by experiences which taught it that wanting too much was dangerous. That succeeding meant something threatening. That the familiar pain of failure was safer than the unfamiliar risk of actually finding out what you are capable of. That mind is not your enemy. It was trying to protect you. In the only way it knew how. With the information it had. From the experiences that shaped it before you were old enough to choose what shaped you. But you are old enough now. Old enough to look at the pattern with honest eyes. To trace it back to where it started. To question whether the threat it has been protecting you from is still real or whether you have been living inside a protection that outlived its purpose years ago. The goal you keep starting and abandoning is not evidence that you are not capable of achieving it. It is evidence that some part of you does not yet believe you are allowed to. Changing what you do begins with changing what you believe. And changing what you believe begins with honestly examining the beliefs that have been running the show without your permission. You are not broken. You are patterned. And patterns can be changed. Not overnight. Not without discomfort. Not without the humility of looking at yourself honestly and the courage of taking small steps in the direction the sabotage has been blocking. But they can be changed. And the version of you on the other side of that change, the one who finally lets the good thing happen, who finally allows the success to land, who finally stops destroying what they most want, that version has been waiting for you to decide it is time. Decide it is time. If this video reached something real in you today, please do 3 things right now. Like this video so more people who are trapped in their own self-sabotage can find this conversation and finally understand what has been happening beneath the surface. Drop a comment below telling me one specific way you are going to interrupt your self-sabotage pattern this week. I read every single one, and making that commitment publicly makes it more real. And if you are not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell right now. We go deep every single week on psychology, behavior, and the real work of becoming the person who stops getting in their own way. You are closer than you think. See you tomorrow.